Booktube. It is me, and this is Jay's comments on YouTube, or the fact that I'm terrible at doing comments on YouTube. Sometimes so slow that the videos I want to comment on get deleted. So I thought, hey, why not inaugurally try doing my comments on the video, on videos on video, and see how that works. So yes, the first video I wanted to comment on got deleted before I could actually comment on it, which is a shame. I'm not going to name the YouTuber, or I'll try and be kind of circumspect, because I thought it kind of raised an interesting idea and had an interesting response to it. And yeah, so let's start off with that one. So the booktuber in question, who I shall not name, was reviewing a book where he just ended up not getting along with the book. There was a murderer. It was a fictional book, and it was making use of out-of-copyright characters, and they were investigating a murderer that was a actual real historical thing. And the booktuber ended up not getting along with the book because it went for kind of a light tone, but the fact that it was a light tone but was talking about murders of actual people, very brutal murders of actual people, just as he went along, just became more and more off-putting. It was one of these things where he just felt that the tone or the approach just simply crossed the line for him. And I found that actually a really interesting review to listen to, because I think we all have those different lines where there's stuff that we will find funny, either whether it's we're at a certain time in life, or if we're in a certain mood for kind of a wacky comedy about brutal killers. It's like there's sometimes that you can actually be in the mood for something like that, or when you're more accepting of something, like, oh, it's happened. I think for some people, if it happened far enough back in time, none of the people who families who of these people, they're dead, and the people who were related to them are dead, and maybe there's ancestors, but it's so removed that it's interesting how people can make a disconnect. Like someone like Genghis Khan gets used as like, oh, this kind of weird, wacky character sometimes. Whereas, I mean, he's up there with Stalin and Hitler as one of these people who decimated gigantic hunks of the population. But as a people, and maybe as a Western people who've that further away, you disconnect from somebody who's probably genocidal in his scope. So I found that as like really interesting, like, this is the point where this reviewer found it crossed the line for them. It was interesting because the one comment that was there for the video was saying, well, you knew it was a brutal murder from the beginning. You'd already read like nonfiction books about this murder. So why did you go into the book in the first place expecting you were going to get something different? It seems like you were being rather willful, and big surprise that you didn't end up liking the book, which I think it's one of the, I do think I think that there's a very fine line of where some things can rub you the wrong way, or just authors that actually, that kind of they bug you, but you also are entertained by them. So you keep on going back to the books, and you keep on having all these problems with their books, and keep on maybe kvetching about them to your friends, or potentially on Booktube. But there's something there that just kind of it niggles at you, and you have to talk, and you need to talk about it, and you need to get it out. And I think there's a real value to that. Sometimes I think maybe I'm saying when I'm talking about stuff like why something in a book bothered me, why this particular type of sexism. Sexism is an interesting thing. I find that I can accept sexism in a book set in Victorian times. Like, it's like, well, that's just olden times. So of course, yes, women had no rights, and were viewed a very certain way, and they were treated a certain way. And my hackles don't get up. It's just like, okay, that's a historical time, and we're depicting that accurately, and I can accept that. Whereas once we get into books that are set in like the 50s, 60s, and are actually, written in those times, where psychologically I know that, yes, women they were nowhere near the rights. I mean, they had the right to vote, but it was still a seriously circumscribed different time for women. but just because that it feels like it feels a modern setting. People are wearing recognizably like clothes that I'm wearing now, or are in cars, or it's suddenly it's no longer old timey, it's modern time, and it really bugs me, and it really, like, all the sexism and the gross kind of it just really bugs me. And I mean it also might be that it feels like much more of a transitional time, even though I think Victorian time probably has everybody beat for a transitional time of the Industrial Revolution and the true changes that were happening in the world. But there's something about that hits me as a reader. That says as much about me as a reader reacting poorly to a book. There was a certain discussion just recently about the MEGalong, which if you're not into this, The Perks of Being Book is doing a read of Meg by Steve Alton, and wow, this is an awesome, terrible, hilarious, awesome Jurassic Shark book, but it's written in like 1998 or something like that, and I find it has a lot of really sexist stuff and how it treats women and stuff like that. And Paperback Junky is like, well, why get political? Why get bothered by this sort of stuff? It's not trying to make a political statement. But, of course, I think this is my perspective, of course, is that everything makes a political statement. And, how it treats women in that book is a political statement in itself. It's a statement of how you view women. And that to me, that's not an old-timey book. I mean, okay, it's 2018. To me, book 20 years old is a very contemporary book, because I'm an old dude who's nearing his 50s. So this is contemporaneous with me. And I think I would have rolled my eyes with that, at that book 20 years ago, and I still do now. I can still enjoy the book, and I think that's a part of the whole thing. Is I think you can celebrate a book but also point out that you think that this is a book all about the anxiety of being a masculine male, and it's kind of hilarious in that, with this big Meg shark, who I guess is the female shark, but also seems to me to be this giant phallic symbol at the same time. But okay, I'm totally off base. But yeah, so there's this whole thing of just like, I really enjoy negative reviews. I enjoy reviews where people tell me about why this book bothered me. And this reviewer did a really good job of outlining why this book bothered him in such a way that I think I could think someone could listen to his review and say, oh, actually, that book sounded interesting to me and I want to read it. So yeah. So, for whatever reason it got deleted, but I wanted to make a comment on it. So that was my comment on that. I could go into a whole thing about book hauls and anti-book hauls and the great Memento Mori video, which I will post a link down below, of the end of book hauls, where he does a book haul, but it slowly gets taken over by forest fires and clips of forest fires until he's drowned out and blotted out. And then it's an amazing video, and I gushed fanboy like on it in the comments there, and this is my little gush there, but this is one of these great cyclical things of the book haul, and on such a commercial venue, ultimately, like Booktube, hosted by YouTube, hosted by Google, where this is all the machine. We are all the machine. We are all the machine of consumerism, and I think it's rather hard to get away from that. I think there's ways to be thoughtful in that, and I think Memento Mori is being very thoughtful and very impish in his video, and I recommend you check that out, and I recommend you check out all the other videos where the counters back and forth, because if we are going to be corporate consumer stooges, we can at least be thoughtful corporate consumer stooges. So that's my comments on Booktube for this week, and perhaps only time, but I just wanted to do a little video on that. So yes, more videos later.